Content presented in Cheshire Corners is for educational and informational purposes only. Please consult a legal professional if you have any questions or concerns about the content of this disclaimer, this series, or the legal implications surrounding psychedelic substances in your jurisdiction.
The focus here is what harm reduction means and how we can help people have safer, more protected experiences with plant medicines.
My mother had end-of-life distress and anxiety. She had a recent cancer diagnosis and had read this book. And 10 pages in, my 75-year-old mother said to my dad, Nixon supporters, totally conservative, but they flipped right now on this, she said, grow magic mushrooms.
In preparation for the experience, I'll often be very blunt with people about, hey, this could be potentially the most challenging experience of your entire life.
As my teacher says, the world needs help, the world needs healing.
And so I think it's important that you also have somebody who's outside of the medicine circle or somebody that knows you, that is not invested in you doing more medicine.
Hello there, this is my digital AI clone, believe it or not. I'm Rita Tsalyuk, and welcome to another episode of Cheshire Corners. I will be your host as we trip through the looking glass as we go to Collaborence Conference 2025. Denver's buzzing with psychedelic events, and today we're diving into a panel all about harm reduction in Colorado's personal use space.
Thank you all for joining us for this next panel. This is for the next 45 minutes, we'll be talking about harm reduction in the decriminalized personal use space in Colorado. And this is a topic that is close to my heart as a facilitator and as someone who's been working in the decriminalized personal use space for the last 3 years in Colorado. So I'm happy to be moderating this and be joined by four of my friends and colleagues, Morgan Campbell, and we'll do longer introductions in a minute, Brent, Maxinoski, Erin, Shay, and Teresa, Crossland. As Colorado's psychedelic landscape evolves, questions arise around safety, ethics, and support in decriminalized personal use settings. This panel brings together a licensed psilocybin facilitator, a psychiatrist, a psychotherapist, and 2 underground plant medicine practitioners. And in this time, we'll explore what the law allows, ethical fundamentals for unlicensed spaces, and how healthcare professionals can best support clients who are choosing to experiment with psychedelics on their own. So we intend for this to be a real-world collaborative dialogue bridging the clinical practice of different types, community care, and ethics. And I appreciate your attention, and we will have some questions as we go through, questions and answers as we go through this. Let's have each panelist introduce themselves. My name is Erin Witter. I'm the moderator. I was one of the first licensed psilocybin facilitators in the state of Colorado, and I'm honored to be practicing and working as part of Teresa's team at Happy Rebel Healing, which is in North Boulder. It's a magical time to be alive, as some other people have said, to be in Colorado during this time where we have the opportunity to serve others and work with these medicines for the benefit of everyone. I also founded the Colorado Psychedelic Society at the end of 2022, and I'm a board member of the Psilocybin Facilitators Association, which is a partnership with PATA, the organization that's part of Collaborence. My own journey really started in 2021 with some other plant medicines, and then allowed me to open up my awareness to some of the other legal options with psilocybin in Colorado at this time. And now I'll pass the mic to Morgan.
Hi, I'm Morgan, and I will start my introduction by telling a story about my mother. It's a harm reduction story. So Michael Pollan published a book a few years ago called How to Change Your Mind, and that was like my entree into psychedelics. My mother had end-of-life distress and anxiety. She had a recent cancer diagnosis and had read this book. And 10 pages in, my 75-year-old mother said to my dad, Nixon supporters, totally conservative, but they flipped right now on this. She said, grow magic mushrooms. So 2 months later, the basement was a fully functioning grow house. They had mushrooms. And I said, Mom, there's a thing called harm reduction. You want to have a sitter and you want to make sure you're not, doing anything dangerous. And she said, and then she took a big fistful, I think it was like 6 grams. She's not a huge lady. She's like 110 pounds of mushrooms. And then she said, God damn it, Morgan, you're supposed to be telling me about how to control risk. Aren't you in medical school and you're a psychiatrist? I took a bath and I scalded my ankles. Look at this. And then she said, this was the worst trip. This is the worst experience of my life. I thought about suicide. I thought about sources of shame. I thought about how I'm ashamed of you. I thought of how I'm ashamed of my brother. And then, anyway, overall, I'm proud of you, Morgan, she said, but every single source of shame was just brought right in front of me and I'm miserable. And then 2 weeks later, she said, I haven't been ruminating and I haven't been thinking about negative stuff at all. I don't know why I'm on an SSRI. She got out for SSRI successfully. Anyway, that's an introduction to my first foray with harm reduction. I moved here 2 months, about me, 3 months ago. I'm a psychiatrist. I would work in a harm reduction capacity with facilitators in the Northeast. But this place is like legal and it's a Morgan Campbell themed playground over here. And I can't wait to work with patients, helping them get off of SSRIs, off of some of these horrible medications when that's possible, and then on to more natural sources of healing. And that is me.
That was a tough introduction to follow, by the way. My name is Brent Maxinoski. I founded an organization called Jornada here in Colorado a few years ago, dedicated to creating and implementing basically psychedelic frameworks for intentional psychedelic practice that speak the language, so to speak, of the modern West or fit into our culture, so to speak. To just kind of intro my stance on this, I am an underground, I guess you'd put it, or at least decrim operator in some way, shape, or form. I hold space for people in ceremony, educate people on the use of psychedelics, how to navigate the experience, mitigate the risks, maximize the potential benefits. And I found my way into psychedelic practice, as I call it, my own personal psychedelic practice at a really young age. I think the only reason that it worked out for me was that I was very focused on curiosity and education right away. So the week after my first psilocybin experience, which was not done in a very intentional way, nonetheless, I found that there was just obvious benefit to be had in the experience. And so I became very curious about it and started buying books and learning everything that I could about psychedelics, the history, their application, how they had been experimented with and implemented across cultures and the ages. And I think that laid the foundation for my intentionality and how I could navigate the world safely with psychedelics, but also, again, maximize the potential benefits from it. And it sort of became my mission thereafter to learn everything that I could and communicate everything that I could to basically everyone that I could. As a very young person, that got me into a lot of trouble, but here we are. And so again, I think to summarize my stance on this, I'm a huge proponent of personal use. I think that that's where the most widespread benefit will be seen in our culture eventually. It'll definitely take some time. I think it should be done gradually and intelligently. But I think in order for us to navigate this world of psychedelics and implementing this into our culture, then we have to really establish and build upon a foundation of true intentionality, deep curiosity, education, and that's how we're going to do this in the best way possible.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Erin Shay. Similar to your mother, I think shame was my introduction to psychedelic plant medicine. I'm originally from Denver, and in 2017, I was living in Venice Beach, California. I had tried therapy, hypnotherapy, yoga, meditation, juice fasts, all of the things, and I was still an anxious and depressed wreck. And a friend of mine invited me to go to a ceremony, and I didn't know what that meant. And she said, it's ayahuasca. And something deep inside of me said, yes, this is it. And I went, and it sparked this incredible curiosity for how could I drink something that contains intelligence, that spoke to my heart, that helped me see shame, the roots of my shame. And that began this kind of insane quest to learn. And I eventually left my job in Silicon Valley and moved to the Amazon jungle. And since 2017, I've been studying with my Shipibo teachers, primarily Ricardo Amaringo. And in 2023, after completing a 13-month dieta, Ricardo said, okay, you're ready, you need to help people. And honestly, my thought was, fuck, because I'm a white woman from Colorado who is mysteriously drawn to these sacred technologies. But as my teacher says, the world needs help, the world needs healing. And so I find myself here trying to bridge what I've learned in the jungle, my own journey through trauma healing, through discovering how my shame is not just mine, but has traveled through my family, through alcoholism, sexual abuse, abuse at the hands of the Catholic Church and other oppressors. And yeah, it's a really interesting time and place to be here. So I currently live in Boulder. I offer mentorship and education support for the entire psychedelic experience, from preparation to the actual journey to integration. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Teresa Crossland. There is a bit of irony of sitting here because on one hand, I'm the owner of Happy Rebel Healing, which is the first licensed healing center in Boulder. I'm the second clinical facilitator licensed in Colorado. I've worked on the MAPS clinical trials for MDMA for PTSD. And yet my origins are completely from personal use. I went to the Grateful Dead in 1993, and I've got 3 decades of recreational experimentation. And so as the world's bridged for me, it's been an interesting path. And so to find myself on this panel representing the legal space, it's just a joy to talk about harm reduction and personal use because I'm a huge proponent of that. And when clients come into my space as my therapy clients and have questions for me, I am full of personal use stories and what not to do and how to keep yourself safe. And none of it has come from my education, my school. It has come from near misses and run-ins with the law. And, I'm still here. So thanks, Erin, for having me here.
Thank you all for the introductions and for really helping us learn more about your own personal journeys. So the focus here is what harm reduction means and how we can help people have safer, more protected experiences with plant medicines outside of the licensed regulated model. And that's a bridge for people that are coming to Collaborance, because many people are not involved with the regulated model. Many people are just curious and also maybe experimenting on their own with plant medicines. And that experimentation is really why we talk about harm reduction, because if we're not careful, we can open ourselves up and be very vulnerable to unskilled practitioners that can harm us, or having access to plant medicines that we get from someone we don't know where it came from. We don't really know what it consists of, or it hasn't been procured in the proper manner. So to better define really what harm reduction means, from my experience and my education and certifications, really when we talk about psychedelic experiences, we say that we become so vulnerable, we leave the ego behind, we leave our day-to-day mind behind, and we access parts of our subconscious and parts of our nervous system we don't normally have access to. And through that, we can become influenced by other people's energy, by other people's hang-ups in ways that we're not aware of, in ways that they're not aware of. So harm reduction is being mindful from the very beginning that who we interact with, not just the medicines we ingest, but who we interact with during these experiences is very important. And to operate in the space where we build these trusted containers for people to have safe, protected experiences with plant medicines. We want to emphasize this because we saw in Oregon, the decriminalized option went away. So Colorado right now is the only one in the country that has a decrim personal use space. We need to really cherish this and take care of it, because there's a lot of opportunities here for mistakes to happen, for bad stories to come out in the press, for all the people that are waiting with their decades of prohibition in the back of their mind to say, oh, this is why you shouldn't have done this. This is why it was a bad idea. So we want to really take care. And because I assembled this panel with a variety of people, which you just heard about, I would like to get an opening statement from each of them about how they, from their own perspective, professional, personal use perspective, how they view harm reduction and how they practice it with clients.
I moved to Colorado 3 months ago, so I haven't worked with Colorado clients, but it's been in the context of they've read about some of these medicines, and they want to see a psychiatrist who can speak honestly about how to use them safely, have a conversation about what their tolerance for risk is, disappointments they've had with other kinds of medicines to prepare them. And we're going to talk more about integration later. It's interesting that my mother had that experience where she took just this crazy heroic dose of mushrooms, had a bad, panic-ridden, terrifying trip, and then reported, this is just as good as any of the people who benefited in the clinical trials. Usually it doesn't go that way. So a bad trip is when it isn't supported, when there's a lot of panic involved. That is often associated with people having lower mood, more anxiety, more of whatever it is that they came to benefit from. However, if somebody has what begins as a bad trip and they begin to contextualize it, perhaps with the aid of a sitter, and then after the trip, to understand that they can make meaning out of it. How did they come into contact with shame and fear and the things that are like the root causes of depression? What did they learn, as opposed to, I just got terrified by these things like big monsters and I don't know what to make of it. So harm reduction, how I work with clients related to harm reduction. I'll tell you how I will do it in Colorado. I'm going to tell them about medication interactions, be careful of MAOIs, be careful of lithium. You may find from clinical trials that they've screened out people with bipolar disorder. Some of the things that we say are harm reduction are really more lore than science. And if you look at poison control records, and if you look at surveys of underground practitioners, I think it's 10% of people with bipolar disorder in that range have a worse outcome. So you can actually, permission giving is part of harm reduction as well. Other ways that I'll work with harm reduction, really having conversations about therapists and practitioners who work in this space, the accumulated wisdom of people who've been doing this for many, many years, which I would love to be able to bring that to my clients. So that is my experience of harm reduction with clients.
Yeah, harm reduction is such a widespread topic, but I guess to try to condense it as much as possible, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but education absolutely is key. Education on all aspects of it. What you may expect. I mean, there's no roadmap for a psychedelic experience, as probably everyone in this room knows, but at least understanding what the possibilities are on both sides of that spectrum, right? So I often tell people in preparation, which I really consider integration a thread woven through the entire process. I don't think of preparation as a separate thing, but in preparation for the experience, I'll often be very blunt with people about, hey, this could be potentially the most challenging experience of your entire life. And if you're not ready to sort of lift up the psychological rug, so to speak, and see what's under there and be okay with whatever that is and be curious about whatever that is and work through it, then you're probably not ready for the experience. And I think that that's just part of the whole education process, absolutely knowing what the dose range should be and what type of effects and settings should go along with that dose range, how to navigate the experience. Again, so you're mitigating those risks and maximizing those benefits. I just think that all of this is part of approaching it with intentionality, and it's also, it's just how to do it intelligently, no matter what the context is in also. I don't think what I'm talking about necessarily applies to the quote-unquote decriminalized personal use space. I think it applies to all contexts for working with psychedelics across the board, and I think that should be cohesive. At the end of the day, to me, this is about a cultural mindset shift about how we as a culture relate to and perceive these substances and their experiences that they elicit. And I think it's going to take time for us to get to where that's really efficiently implemented into our culture. But we just need to be patient about doing that, educating people, talking about it as much as possible, destigmatizing as much as possible, making sure people also understand where their source is if they're just going out onto the street and sourcing something. Mushrooms are obviously a little bit safer than something like LSD or MDMA to source because you don't really know what you're getting when you're getting something synthetic like that as opposed to psilocybin. But at the end of the day, even if you are sourcing something that's synthetic, you should probably be testing that with a test from Miraculix or Dance Safe or something like that to know what you've actually gotten, know what the actual dose is, weigh that dose, be very intentional about how you approach all of these things. And so I suppose I'm rambling, but all of this stuff goes into just, again, being intentional about the process from start to finish. You mentioned integration. Again, to me, integration is everything in this process. The experience is worth often very little without it. And so it should become a lifestyle and a practice, and it should be undertaken as such.
I so agree. And yeah, just want to echo so much of what both of you just shared. I guess I'm answering the question. I don't know why I'm having so much feedback. Let's see. Yeah, whenever I work with people, I have a very strict protocol of a very in-depth intake form, and it covers many different dimensions of people's lives. Their medical history, if there's any contraindicated medications, I consult with MDs just to understand possible risk there. Education throughout, I think, is, as you mentioned, Brent, foundational. Something that I really assess when connecting with people is how reliably can they connect to their present day adult self. If I see them in our intake conversations, and I usually talk with someone for at least 2 hours one-on-one, often more, if they can't reliably come back to a sense of now, that does not feel safe to me. And I love so much what Andrea said in the opening of, we don't rush, take the time, tune in with nature. It might not be time. And that's something that I've learned so deeply through my training in the jungle, is that this isn't about us having an agenda. And it's, I think, oftentimes in direct conflict with this systematized, legalized world that we're entering into. It's not on a schedule. And that's what I'm really listening for with people when I get to know them, when I talk with them. What time is it for them? Is it time to build more trust? Am I the right person? And I always invite people, as we talk for the first time, I say, pay attention to how it feels when you're sharing details about your life. Do you feel safe talking with me about this? If not, I'm not the right person for you, and I'm not going to take offense. In fact, I will celebrate you in finding a better fit. And something that was mentioned on the veterans panel was how a lived understanding of an experience, especially something deeply traumatic, can be the most transformational thing for someone, especially in a psychedelic journey. I have found that to be so profoundly true. If I know someone has lived a glimpse of what I am working through, there's infinitely more trust. I can feel that their system is attuned to the level of tenderness that I need. And so it's, I think, taking the time to build relationships ahead of time. In the personal use space, I think just talking about these things and encouraging folks to find a friend who really, really can meet them there. And if they can't have even that conversation, it's probably not the right friend. You know, to really develop the intimacy, take the time. And beyond that, it's treating it sacredly. These are such sacred openings that we can experience through working with psilocybin, ayahuasca, peyote, whatever the medicine is. And something that I love through the ayahuasca preparation is that there's a preparation dieta. You deliberately eliminate stimulants. You don't watch violent TVs or movies, or ideally any media. And it's really a turning inward. And I think that alone, I've heard people come to ceremonies and they say, even through this past week of preparing, I've learned so much about where my blockages are. So I think slowing down, building trust, and listening, those are the biggest things that we can do to support harm reduction.
To echo that, as a therapist, the people that I see sort of fall into a few different categories. So I see a lot of CU kids. So I will have clients come in and they're talking about going to camp at Moab and eating mushrooms, or going to a festival. And so depending on what I know about them, I'm going to want to know what their plan is, what they're taking, who they're with. I've got other clients who are looking to do couples work at home on their own with their partner. I have people who have reached out to other underground therapists to do more serious healing work. And then I've got a couple of clients who will sit with their friends. So it's very person-centered. And so depending on who it is I'm talking to, it very much tailors what kind of conversations I'm having. And so when I'm talking to the CU students, first I have to establish my own street credibility that I have eaten your weight in mushrooms. So for them, it's about setting and safety. Do they know where they're getting what they're getting? I think about, in 1995, I went to a Pink Floyd concert with somebody who I had been dating for 2 weeks, and I learned a lot about not doing this experience with somebody who you have an unstable relationship with. I learned a lot about that night. Recreational use out camping, I would say 99% of the time, everything's fine. I have a horror story where our dogs ran into some porcupines and we were on heroic doses and had to drive hours to an emergency vet. It was terrible. So putting those safety things into place. If I'm talking to clients who are going to go and sit with their partners in their homes, then it's a different conversation about what your intentions are and the prep that you do together. I might even have their partner come in and we can have conversations about what might come up, how to take care of each other, how to take turns. And then my clients who sit for other people, we have more collegial conversations, concepts about inner healing intelligence and beginner's mind and how to hold space for people. So yeah, I think depending on who it is I'm talking to, really fairly much tailors how I talk about harm reduction and personal use.
I've encouraged pretty much everyone, or I've at least told everyone that I've worked with over the years, that my goal is to get them to the point where they're comfortable enough to be working with these substances on their own without necessarily the guidance of somebody like myself, in a very wide range of context settings and for a very wide range of intentions. Because I think at the end of the day, all of this, no matter the context, whether it's personal use model, license model, et cetera, intentional psychedelic work or intentional psychedelic practice is really about empowering the individual to find healing, spirituality, growth, whatever the end goal is for that person within and for themselves. And so with that, I always encourage people to get out of here as much as possible. Also get out of, the mind of whoever the guide is or the facilitator that you're working with as well, and start to take as much personal responsibility as possible about, how do I actually feel right now? Do I feel it's time to take more? Do I feel it's time to have another experience? And I do want to be clear, sometimes for integration, it does make sense to have a follow-up experience. Not always, by any means, right? And so it's, Teresa had mentioned earlier that it's everyone that she works with, it's different for each person. It should be highly personalized. But I think that we as the facilitators really can only go so far, and there really shouldn't be gatekeepers within the psychedelic space that are telling you what you should and shouldn't do with your experiences. It needs to be that power is transitioned to the individual, because again, at the end of the day, no matter the context, I think that's what psychedelic healing is about, is empowering you specifically. So a lot of preparation, integration, et cetera, should be, in my eyes, around that specifically, is how do we get you to the point where you feel confident making those decisions for yourself, and you coming with the inner knowing that, hey, this is time, or this dose is right, or this dose is wrong, and it's not time. Anyway, yeah, so I think that's probably foundational to how we should be all working with this, no matter the context, licensed or unlicensed.
I'm so sorry that you've experienced that. I have also experienced that, and there's a very particular type of trauma that comes from being traumatized while seeking a medicinal experience. It's horrible, and I'm so sorry that you know that firsthand. Yeah, I have been on such a deep journey of trying to understand what it is, having a profoundly traumatized nervous system and a deep pull towards strong plant medicine experiences like ayahuasca and psilocybin. I'm living that question. And what I can say is that the more that I've come in contact with what my system actually needs, the more I can appropriately dose. My partner is here in the audience, and he can attest to the fact that I've had a full journey on a teeny tiny microdose. Yeah, and I think that's actually such a beautiful thing that these medicines can teach us, is like you were saying with tea, it doesn't even have to be a psychoactive experience, that when we can really be with what's happening, wow, things can move, evolve, unfold. And I am, at this point, just very suspicious of anyone who's pushing more medicine on someone. It's like, how do you know that that's medicine? And I've been there on the receiving end of it, of you need more medicine. Yeah, I feel very passionate about this, and it feels like a seed of an ongoing conversation that I think is imperative to have in this culture, because we love speed in this culture. We love intensity. We are taught to want more. And that, I believe deeply, is the voice of trauma speaking, not the voice of medicine. So I think, just the humbling experience that we're all in this moment. Frankly, most of us without true elders, this is where we find ourselves. And this is why it's so important to come together in community and have these conversations of, supporting people through big processes. And sometimes a big dose is appropriate. I'm not saying that. I have certainly had the most life-changing experiences with a huge dose. However, when processing deep trauma, I have found that's not the time for a heroic dose, because my system is fried. It's more a time for gentle connection, tenderness, somatic regulation, feet on the ground. So I think it's, if you want to connect after, I'd be very happy to connect more. Thank you.
I'll just give a quick plug for having your own therapist. I know I went to ceremony last year. I did 5 and came home and was just so grateful to go back to my therapist, who had been working with me for years. To have somebody who knows you and who can help you integrate, psychedelically friendly therapists who are not going to judge you, not going to shame you, who've got some experience. But I came back from the jungle with huge shifts, and it was months of an unfolding process of my therapist telling me to slow down, to be curious, to work through what had happened. And so I think it's important that you also have somebody who's outside of the medicine circle, or somebody that knows you, that is not invested in you doing more medicine, who's invested in you being healthy and happy and safe.
You keep them up. I like to wrap up in a few minutes, but I'd like each panelist to just in a couple sentences say, if there's one thing about harm reduction that's most important, here's what it is.
We were joking earlier about this, and I was like, only break one law at a time. Erin. I guess it would just be about treating yourself like somebody that you love. And so being safe about what you're putting into your body, about who you're with, about when you're doing it. Just if you truly love yourself, you'll make good decisions that will keep you safe.
Wise. I feel like I'm going to throw a little curveball in here. I think something to remember is that when we consume any of these medicines, we don't know the outcome. And this is a huge thing that I continually am learning, is that I don't know the trajectory of the healing process I'm undergoing. Like, I've been experiencing things that are not safe as I've unearthed, abuse, trauma, and the patterns, have had been continuing in my life. And I think even the concept harm reduction, sometimes there's like a Western view that it's like, well, we can engage with this in a way that's perfectly safe. Like, maybe we can't, and maybe that's part of the point. Like, maybe some things need to crumble so that we can come back to our senses and feel how much needs to shift in this world for every single person to be safe. So I don't know. I love the idea of harm reduction. I love the idea of people having safe experiences. But when I'm really honest in the depth of my being, I think that we need to come to a point of deep reckoning that the way we're living as a collective society is not okay.
That's beautiful. I think that in order to maximize the potential benefits and minimize the risks, we just have to integrate, if you are going to be working with psychedelics as part of your healing, growth, spiritual endeavor, then it needs to become a practice, similar to meditation as a practice or yoga as a practice, et cetera. I think it's an ongoing process that should be started slow. Feel your way into it. Learn to trust yourself as much as possible rather than others, as we were stating, is there really are no gurus. Nobody really knows a whole lot more than you, right? And even if they do, then their opinion is probably different than the next person who knows more than you about it too. So I think that's the point is again, that self-empowerment, taking, responsibility for the fact that this is not necessarily a safe endeavor, but there could potentially be enormous benefit in approaching it safely, correctly, and intentionally, and creating that ongoing practice. Again, integration to me is more like a lifestyle. It doesn't even really have a beginning and an end. Integration is the entire context under which the psychedelic experience sometimes lies, if that makes sense. I think so. Harm reduction, I know that's a little vague, but harm reduction should be thought of in that sense. Is again, it's a lifestyle. It's a practice. It's an ongoing pursuit.
The answer I should give for the most important thing about harm reduction, because I'm the psychiatrist on this panel, is don't do it with lithium or MAOIs or MDMA. Be safe. Don't do it if you're nervous ahead of time because you could have a panic attack. That's the usual reason people go to an ED. Be aware that there's a thing called HPPD, the super rare hallucinating persisting perceptual disorder, vanishingly rare, different from flashbacks, but know what you're getting into. That's what I should say, but the drum that I would like to beat right now is that we are living in what might be the most exciting time in medicine, the most exciting time, at least for Westerners, of learning who we are as a species, what our place is in the world. And harm reduction, that positions us as authorities on something that is mystical and transcendent. So instead of telling you what I think is the most important thing about harm reduction, I will invite you to be super curious. What can you learn? What can you contribute? What can we pass on to each other in our social networks that will keep us safe and point us towards benefit? So the same mystical, are we encountering spirit, or what the hell is this? Who here has seen a DMT alien? Raise your hand. Okay, so harm reduction, what the fuck are those things? I don't know. I mean, be careful of the alien, but I think just be super curious, open, and humble in front of new data, and remember it and teach it.
And are the machine elves looking out for us in terms of harm reduction? That's the question. Thank you all so much. We could talk about this for a lot longer, but we have limited time. It's an honor to sit with you and to hear your stories and to have this conversation. And thank you all for joining us and asking questions. One segue here regarding harm reduction is contraindications and medications you're taking while you're taking plant medicines. And this is something that Kristen will be presenting on next, talking about being aware of contraindications for different substances. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you liked it, please like and subscribe to Cheshire Corners. Tell me what you think in the comments. And as always, don't get psyched out.